Good afternoon, and welcome to the Inside Teen Hour. My name is Frederik. You're listening to KHTS 98.1 FM, and this is the time of the week where we talk about issues related to teen mental health. I am the owner of Insight Treatment Programs. It's a program here in Santa Clarita. It's a teen intensive outpatient programs for teenagers that are struggling and family that's struggling with mental health issues or drug and alcohol issues. So today in the studio, I got Stefani Roscoe. She's an LCSW from not necessarily here in our community. She has a facility down in Sherman Oaks and down by LAX. But Stefani and I have known each other for many years, and Stefani and I both share the passion about making sure that we can provide good and effective teen groups. So we both believe that teen therapy often should happen in a group setting. So here today, Stefani and I are going to talk a lot about group therapy, why it's important, who it's good for, what teens can get out of doing teen groups rather than individual sessions, what parents potentially can get out of doing groups instead of individual sessions. So we're going to touch on all of those things in the hour today. Welcome to the studio, Stefani. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much, Frederik. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is great.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to have some fun here and hopefully be able to provide some good information about, why is group therapy so important. I'm sure we can. Stefani, before we start, I mean, first of all, I went on your website. I haven't been there for a while, and I went there and I saw your quote you had there on the front page where it says, "We don't have to do all of it alone. We never meant to." And I think that's very true, right? That we thrive in the communities, and we have our little groups. And I think before we start today, maybe I should just say I see it inside. I see we're getting a lot of families that come in and where the kids feel very alone. They feel that they're not understood, and they feel that they've been going through life with people around them. They've had a lot of friends, but they often feel that these people don't know them for who they really are. And it's very hard for them to start that process of opening up to other people and trusting that other people are going to love them for who they are and what goes on with them and for the deficiencies and the challenges that they have. So I think it's very, yeah, I just want to I just want to say that I think I like your quote on your website, and I think it's very true.
Oh, thanks. And I'm so glad that you could see the relationship between me putting that quote there and the benefits of group. I think you already made the connection for me.
Good. Glad we're on the same page there. But Stefani, before we start, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell the listener out there, about your private practice and why you're so dedicated to this, to what you do and to working with teens in group settings.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I got my degree in social work. I think because the underpinnings of everything that I do is really based in social justice, cultural humility, and I've always wanted to work with children. I worked in community mental health for a long time, always with kids, until I was in a group practice, and then decided I wanted to do things on my own. I had my own ideas, my own ways of doing things, and I started my own private practice. So primarily, I get to work with kids and families. I work with plenty of adults as well, but a good part of my passion lies in working with children, both young, 0 to 5, as well as, middle school age, and then, of course, teenagers. I think that they are like the best kept secret. I think that teens are just awesome, and I love working with them, and I always have, and I've always had a special, I think, understanding and appreciation of them. And because of that, I have an angle that I can often provide to parents who, of course, are worried about what their kids are going through, maybe have forgotten what it was like to be a teen. And so I love to work with families as well, along with teens, to help them better communicate and, have better days and enjoy each other, which is really why you build a family in the first place.
Hmm. But what I also like about some of your experience, Stephanie, or at least your focus is, I feel here over the years you've time and time again expressed how important it is to build up a skill set of running groups. Because from my
Yes.
perspective, in running treatment programs, we have 7 locations and we deal with a lot of clinicians, and there's obviously some clinicians, many clinicians are very focused on the individual sessions and doing work with
Hmm.
with the parents or with the teens in sort of a one-on-one individual setting. And
Yeah.
I feel it's definitely some different skill sets that you need to have
Hmm.
to be a good therapist in individual session versus being a good group therapist. And I feel
Yeah.
developing that skill set as being a good group therapist is very important. And you're one of those that I know in the industry who sort of have had focus on, hey, look, I need to develop that skill set. It doesn't come automatically.
Hmm.
Being in a group with, 12 teenagers and running that group can be extremely difficult and challenging.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you need a different skill set, or often at least some,
Absolutely.
right, than be
Yeah. I
doing
mean,
individual sessions.
yeah. I actually went ahead and got a certification, so I'm a certified group therapist, which I decided I needed to do for all the reasons that you're saying. It it is a very specific skill set, and you never stop learning. I mean, I was in a training this weekend, and I've been doing intense intensively. I've been doing groups since probably 2016, and I'm always building on those skills. And it's my favorite thing to do because it's actually so much more dynamic than individual therapy. When you've got all of these people in the room at one time, I'm not the only person that has something valuable to say in the room anymore because they're all relating to each other. And so, how can I balance all the things that they have to say, as well as all of their feelings and any thoughts that they may be sitting with, where I'm going to try and encourage them to be talking about them? It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to balance.
And Stephanie, so that brings us a little bit to the why, right? Why would you say that group therapy is so important? What is it? What is that you find? How would you explain to a parent why it would be necessary sometimes for a teen to be in a teen group rather than only or maybe simultaneously with doing individual session with their primary therapist?
Right. Yeah, I have found almost more healing in the group universe than I have in the individual. When you get teams in a group, which, as you mentioned before, sometimes is difficult. Sometimes kids are like, "Oh, I don't want to be listening to other people's stuff. I don't want to have to sit through a bunch of stuff. I feel shy about sharing my things." But if you can convince them to get there, which has a lot to do with building a rapport with them, with building an alliance and having them trust you, then once you get them in there, they start to see immediately that they're not alone. This is a time in their life when social interactions and their peers become top priority. They go from depending on their parents to depending on their peers. And once they get into one of these groups and they can see, oh, they've dealt with that too, or oh, they think it's okay that I do that. There's something kind of magical that happens to their self-esteem, their confidence, their ability to relate to other people, and their ability to speak more about their feelings.
Hmm. So you mentioned a keyword that sort of feel comfortable, right, and feel safe in the group. Um,
That's right.
what can you elaborate a little bit on that? How would you do that? What does that
Sure.
require? I mean, I know a lot of kids that come to Insight, and I should say in an intensive outpatient program like ours, the teens are only doing one individual session every week. The rest of the time,
Mhm.
which is an additional, 12 or 16 hours of therapy, is done in a group
Mhm.
setting. And that is primarily because we feel at that level of care, group therapy has an enormous effect and is really, really, really important. So,
Yes.
so back to the idea of sorry, we see a lot of kids coming in who is scared of going into the group because they are scared
Mhm.
that the group might not be safe for them to share. They're scared that the other
Mhm.
kids will have opinions or judge them. and that
Yes.
they will feel shame. So, how do you, from your perspective, how do you address those things? How do you deal with a teenager that doesn't want to transition into a group therapy session with you?
Right. So that beginning time is really all about you always need to work at a client's pace, their own pacing. And if you can really convince that teen that I am there to follow your pacing and you get to decide how slowly or quickly you want to share your information, things about you, personal things, then they don't feel pressured to do it. They get to sit and just listen if they want. In my groups, anything goes. I've had kids, because this is virtual, I've had kids fall asleep in groups. And the kids
Hmm.
just keep going. And, we talk about it later, how they fell asleep. And how teens need so much sleep these days. Once they see that nothing is getting judged and that everything is acceptable in group, even if they're just witnessing it for the first couple of sessions, it tends to, help them understand, oh, I don't have to be as afraid here as I would in a normal group. I'm not going to see these same kids outside of here. And this is my special place with these particular people where I can kind of unload and share the things that feel scary to me.
Hmm. Yes, it's interesting you say that because I hear what you're saying is it's important for you to have a relationship with the teens and for them to trust you that you are able to navigate the group environment and be able to
Yeah,
navigate and not push them into areas where they don't want to go at that point in time or where they
that's
maybe
right.
not
That's right.
emotionally
Like
capable of going.
if I see them pulling back, then I'm going to note it in group. And, I'm going to take a risk because if they don't want to be highlighted, that may be uncomfortable for them. But it's important to say, hey, I think that Mary's not quite ready. And you guys remember what it was like when you first started group. You remember being nervous. So she's just going to hang out today. I think that today's her day to just sit and listen. And my groups get it. And they say, oh, okay, because everybody kind of gets that sort of treatment while you're there. Whatever it is you're coming with is acceptable. And so the more comfortable and the more kind of relaxed it feels and like it's kind of like a hangout for them, the more I can create that sort of environment, then the more vulnerable they allow themselves to be.
That makes sense. Is there are there specific, I don't know, I'm just asking you, but are there specific techniques or specific examples that you can give of how you manage that? Because obviously when you have 10 kids in a group, I'm sure it can be very difficult as the group leader or the therapist in the room to sort of
Mm-hmm.
remember every single story and remember exactly where to be. And sometimes a group can take the situation to a whole different place very quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love it when they do that. And that's the thing is I'm the facilitator in the room. I have the last say, right? I'm leading
Hmm.
it, but they get to run the group. I really want them to have ownership over the group. So let's say, for example, somebody is being very quiet in group. I'll check in with the others and I'll say, do you guys think that Nicole needs some attention? Is anybody else worried about Nicole? And they'll be like, yes, I was going to talk to her next. I was going to bring her up next. And now she feels pulled in. Now, she also knows that she's not required to speak. Now I'll remind them of that. Don't feel pressured, Nicole, but just want to leave you some space in case you needed help with that. So
Hmm.
that's one way I might do it. Um, I like to enlist the help of the rest of the kids when we're dealing with something. What does everyone think about what Kevin is sharing? Does anyone have any thoughts about it? Is anyone feeling a certain way? Does anyone relate to it? And they start to speak up. And yes, sometimes that takes us on another road. It's my job to make sure not only that Kevin got the attention that he needed, but that I'm supporting the next topic that comes up.
Hmm. What do you feel, Stephanie? How long in your groups? How long does it typically take for the kids to start opening up and start wanting to share or feel comfortable about sharing? I mean,
Uh,
obviously it varies,
yeah,
but is
it
there something
really
that
varies. Yeah.
okay?
I've, yeah, I've got kids that who have been in treatment before, and so they get it, and they come right in and they start talking. And then I've got kids who really did resist coming in, and I was able to, maybe I was working with them individually, and I was able to kind of convince them that this would be really great for them, and they may take a couple of weeks. I've got one kid in my group right now who still struggles to speak up. And that's part of her issue, and part of what we're helping her with is her understanding that her thoughts and feelings are just as important as everyone else's. She kind of leans on, oh, my things aren't as serious, or people have bigger problems than mine, when everybody's very eager to hear from everyone in the group. So, even in the case with this particular person, I'll stop and make room for her and make sure that, she's getting what she needs as well. So they're all really different, but I will check in with them periodically. And if it seems like they're really struggling to speak up in group, then I'll make an appointment with them separately and talk about it with them that way, hoping that I can give them some skills, some ideas about how to open up more in group and find out what's going on for them, because there could be some problem that they're having in the group that they feel like they can't talk about. And when they share it with me, then we can problem solve together.
Hmm. Is it often for you? Is it often sort of a bouncing? How should I say it? Like it's complements each other, right? So you do an individual session, you talk to the person about certain things, and then you somewhat work with the person to prepare them, or work with the teen to prepare them for disclosing some of these things in group.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, I repeat over and over again that they get to decide when they share. And the ones that are more open tend to model for the ones who, struggle to share. They can model what it's like to be vulnerable and what it's like to be supported by everyone. Because once somebody opens up, vulnerability attracts vulnerability. And I see that in all of my groups. So once one person opens up, everyone, goes towards them, moves towards them, and wants to help them and support them and empathize with them. And once they see that repeatedly, then they tend to come out eventually.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just writing a note here. Yes, on that note, I would say that what I feel you're touching on is a little bit about connection, right? Being vulnerable, being able to open up. When you show your
Of course.
vulnerability, then now you're creating connection to the rest of the group. Now you start
Mm-hmm.
getting support. Now they start listening to what you're saying and want to help you out. And I think we can't have this conversation without really talking about community, right? And feeling part of group. And at Insight, one of the things that we notice and we think is very important is to sort of make sure that the kids are playing a game of ping pong before they do group, or are hanging out
Yep.
watching a movie together,
Yep.
or just, we have this warehouse space where there's a basketball hoop and where it's sort
I
of
know,
more of
it's
a clubhouse
fantastic.
feel. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
I wish
But
I could hang out there.
but yeah, I enjoy it too. But the idea is that if we can create an environment, right? Obviously, the kids that we have in our program are there, every day, 4 days a week, so we have a lot more time with the teens. But the idea of them creating community and creating a connection is
Mm-hmm.
extremely important for them to
Absolutely.
start opening up, right? And one quick way of doing that, so to speak, is to be vulnerable and authentic. So if you can help the teens be authentic and vulnerable in a group setting, immediately you will start creating these connections. And
That's
yeah.
true, but it's interesting that you brought up the games, because that is a crucial piece of it too. They have to know that they don't have to come in and talk about heavy stuff. They have the opportunity to come in, and if they want to do the Wordle, they get to do that together. If they want to, like one time they all, shared about which, Harry Potter house they're in.
Hmm.
And one time they all changed their names on the Zoom so that they picked their favorite superhero. And it's this silliness too, and sometimes digging into being a little bit younger, pulling from younger stuff that is also very connecting to them. Like they're giggling together, they're having fun together, and they know that it's okay to let go. And that also provides a wonderful basis for trusting each other and being vulnerability later when they really need it.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. Stephanie, unfortunately, we have to go into a little break now. But we'll be
Okay.
back in a couple of minutes, and we'll talk much more about teen groups, and we'll talk more, Stephanie, about your groups and when you're doing
Great.
these groups and how long they are and what kids benefit from it and what kind of diagnosis they typically have. But we'll be back in a few minutes. So you're listening to KHTS 98.1 FM, and this is Frederik speaking at the Insight Teen Hour. Good afternoon, and welcome back to the Insight Teen Hour. My name is Frederik, and I'm from Insight Treatment Programs here in the Santa Clarita Valley, a teen IOP program. Um, and in the studio today, I have Stefani Roscoe, who's, from my perspective, an expert in group therapy and is doing a lot of teen groups, or has done a lot over the years as well. And she's in the studio today to help us understand more about group therapy, why it's so important, kids that really benefit from group therapy, why that is, and what's able to accomplish through group therapy that you sometimes have problems or that you can't really do through individual sessions. So, welcome back, Stephanie, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
So Stephanie, we were talking a little bit about the importance of group, right? And you had mentioned
Mm-hmm.
we talked about how important it is to be part of a community and feel understood and start opening up about things to your peers rather than just adults that you sometimes don't really trust are going to have your best
Mm-hmm.
interest. But you mentioned also something about how developmentally teens for teens it is very important to be part of group therapy. And can you
Yes.
elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes. I'm pulling from Dan Siegel, which I'm sure you know, who's
Yes.
a wonderful um, therapist who has taught us all so much about the brain. But specifically, he talks about things that are special to the teen brain and what's happening. One of those is their need for social connection, right? Like I'd mentioned before, teens they're starting to isolate from adults. They're starting to see them as not trustable, not cool, not the person to go to. In a teen group, now they have the opportunity to trust their peers with an adult in the room. So while I'm there creating a safe space for them, they're going to be natural and authentic. And if something sort of risky starts to come up, I get to guide that. As a therapist, I get to be the person that starts talking about, guides it towards, safe discussion. How do we talk about safety? What is unsafe about this? And I can model that, and the others tend to follow along so that they don't feel shamed, so they don't feel like they're going to get in trouble, so they don't think they're doing something wrong, but so that they can think more critically about these things while they're having trouble talking to adults. So the
Mm-hmm.
social engagement is a big piece because they start leaning on each other. They want to be seen by each other, and they want to feel safe and secure. They soothe each other, and that's who they're going to now is their peers for that. This social connection piece, as they develop it in group, is helping them to understand what a supportive relationship looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And when kids at this point in their development are learning about supportive relationships, this can lead to future stability, future happiness, because now they're going to take that with them as they continue to develop and their brains continue to prune. They've got an idea of what healthy connection is, what a healthy relationship is. And therefore, when they're meeting more people in their life, bringing more people in their life, even a partner, this can help them understand what real connectedness feels like and what it means to be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, absolutely right.
It,
And maybe I should
yeah.
add to that I feel that we should never underestimate how often teenagers or kids are walking around feeling that they are all alone, even though they're
Yeah.
surrounded by peers and friends. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, at Insight, we see so many kids come in who is, star on the football team or stars on the cheerleader team or swimming team.
Mm-hmm.
They are very popular in their communities. They are very popular amongst peers. They're popular amongst adults, but
Mm-hmm.
still they feel so alone, and they don't feel that they have any real connections because they feel that people don't know them for who they are. And
Right.
if
Well, they've got a whole separate internal world than the external world, right? And they're working on integrating those two. They know that they want to impress and be, the star student or the star football player or whatever. They know they want to do that, but it has to match what's happening inside. And I really think this kind of work helps them to do that. Why do I want to be on the football team? Do I want to be on the football team?
Yes.
What happiness is that bringing me? Do I like that? And so they can start making that internal, start integrating both their external selves and internal selves.
Yep, very true. And it's just a little funny story I want to tell that, but we take the kids up to Big Bear and to Catalina every 3 months for a little 3 day trip, and at those
Uh-huh.
events, it's just a social thing. It's not really clinical, but we sometimes run a little group or talk to the kids about their biggest fears. Right in Big Bear, when it's dark and outside and snow is falling, and we talk to them about some of these scary things in life. And the same thing comes up every single time we go up there and we have a group about fears. And it's
Mm-hmm.
always related to, yeah, but what if all my friends finds out who I really am and what's really going on inside of me,
Mm,
right? It is just always that fear of being rejected by your peers. That is
right.
way more scary than getting cancer or the ozone layer or
Absolutely.
whatever is going on, right? That fear
Mm-hmm.
of being rejected for teenagers is obviously huge and important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you can't express who you really are in a group setting because you've disconnected from that emotional world so long and you're holding on to all these secrets, builds up a lot of shame, right? And a lot of feeling of if people around me would know, nobody would love me, right?
Right.
Nobody knows me for who I really am. So I'm just sort of tying into the idea that yes, we do need to teach our teens to express themselves and express their emotional
Yeah.
world and
And
talk
that
to other
that
peers.
actually ties into the other developmental piece that I was thinking of, which is how common it is for at this age there is so much emotional intensity, right? The emotional intensity is, so great, um, and and that is definitely something that they each believe is their own thing. That they're too dramatic, that they're too, feeling too much. They shouldn't cry. They shouldn't be angry. They should be cool, right? So once they realize everyone is dealing with these intense emotions and that everybody has that experience that you're like ruled by them, then they can hold each other.
Yes.
If somebody has, a big reaction to something in group, I had that happen in one of my teen groups where somebody just objected to the way somebody else said something and he got really reactive and angry. And everybody else was trying to help him untie it and help him understand it. And he became so dysregulated, he shut down his screen. I had to speak to him separately to help him. But when he came back, when he eventually felt the ability to come back, he was able to talk about it and understand that once that shame had kind of come down a little bit for him, everybody was still accepting him, even though he shut down the way he did. Everybody was like, yeah, I've been there. I got it. I get it. And they don't take it personally. They start to understand that we're all going through those really big feelings and trying to figure out how to regulate them.
True. And those kind of things I feel are so difficult to address in individual sessions, right?
Yes,
You can
exactly.
talk about the situation, what happened in school and how did you react. But when you see it play itself out in a teen group like that, that's when I think you can really address it as a therapist and really sort of work with it together with the peers, right? Together with their friends, you can address it
Absolutely.
and move forward from there, right? Good. Well, Stephanie, what about talking? I know a lot of parents when they come to Insight, they often are going, "Well, my teenage daughter, she does not want to be part of group. She has told me many times that she just wants to see an individual therapist. She's not willing to disclose anything.
Hmm.
I don't think it's healthy for her to be surrounded by a bunch of other kids who some of them has the same experience. Other kids might have acted out in different ways, right? Some of the kids in the
Hmm.
group might have acted out by smoking weed and getting high versus
Right.
self-harming and isolating. So no, I don't think it's a good idea to put my daughter into a group like that. And most importantly, she doesn't want to do it. She's gonna shut down. She's gonna be no. It's gonna be too triggering for her to be surrounding herself with a bunch of other teens in this way and expecting for her to be vulnerable and authentic and real in that group. So, how
Right.
do you usually talk to parents about those concerns that at least we
Hmm.
see sometimes?
Yeah. Well, first I need to explore more about what they mean, what their fears are, what could trigger them. because you know there are some teens who really it may not be for them right away. They
Mm-hmm.
may get triggered in group too much that it wouldn't be good for them right away. So I'm going to explore that first. Now, given that most likely this is a parent or a kid who is feeling fearful about the usual vulnerability and not being able to connect, then the psychoeducation around it is very important in helping them understand a lot of what we've been talking about, in that peers are the most important thing. And to also help a parent understand that they are going to be in contact with different kinds of people with different problems their whole life. So isn't this a wonderful place because it's safe and guarded by the therapist? Isn't this a great time to start learning how to be around people who are different than you? Someone who has less problems, more problems, bigger problems, problems you can't necessarily relate to. What does it feel like to be with somebody that's like that? And when it all comes down to it, we find out that we do all connect because we've all got empathy. We all can understand somebody's story. And if somebody does feel triggered about something, then they would feel triggered outside of group as well by something similar that would eventually come along for them. And so here we are in a situation where they might feel triggered. That's where I would come in and provide interventions to help that person regulate and to help better understand what was triggering to them and how they can help themselves the next time.
Yeah, and I've absolutely true. And I also feel sometimes, sometimes the teens are very scared of their emotions, right?
Yeah,
They're scared. Oh, now I feel this feeling of anxiety, right? And it's really uncomfortable. And let me just remove myself from there. So let me either walk
right,
away, or let me get high, or let me self harm, or disassociate. I'm going to do
right.
whatever I need to do to make that feeling go away. And I feel part of treatment, at least from our perspective and insight, part of treatment is to learn to, as you say, navigate that feeling and learn to accept that feeling sometimes. Because if you are anxious, you might continue to be anxious the rest of your life. It's just a matter of
Right.
how are you going to react to it, right? So
That's right.
so really to help the kids push through it sometimes and help the kids really feel the feeling and
Yes,
learn that, hey, I'm not going to die. This is not the end of the world. This is my feeling of anxiety. This is what it is. And yes,
that's
that's
right.
unfortunate and annoying and horrible and feels terrible. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, it's my choice how I'm going to react to it, because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to end in a bad thing right here and there just because I have that feeling. So
Right.
so to really push the kids through that and allow for other kids to help them push through that and feel that
Yes.
feeling and
Yeah. Learning tolerance of an uncomfortable feeling is so key. And that goes for everybody. Some of us didn't learn it when we were teens and we were still trying to figure it out. But
mhm.
that is a really important part because they're going to continually need to know how to do that throughout their lives. As you said, as you were saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what I feel. Well, that's one of the things that I feel group therapy is the only way to really do that, because that's where you're working on it in the moment, rather than
Yes.
an individual session where you're trying to recreate the feeling that they had the day before when they were in school, or and something happened, right? Or they were at
Yes.
home arguing with mom and dad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing about group is that it is a microcosm of society. So
Hmm.
the things that you face in group are the same things that you have faced or will face out in the real world. And so it's a lab is what I like to call it, because everybody's kind of taking risks and experimenting with things and learning from those experiments.
Hmm. And so this is actually a good segue to my next question, Stephanie. Is so we all know that sometimes in group you have a new client, or you have a new teen who has maybe not been in group for a long time, and therefore is very dysregulated, maybe themselves, or just wants to sabotage because they don't want to be there. Um, what
Uh-huh.
what is? I mean, obviously there's many different ways of approaching it, but what do you say to a parent who would say, "Well, look, Stephanie, I'm not comfortable because I know that there will be some kids in the program who might, say something that's really hurtful, or who might use my daughter's or my son's vulnerability and authenticity in the wrong direction and sort of use it against them." Um, what do you say to parents like that who are worried about somebody sabotaging your group as you're in it?
Right. Well, I'm the safeguard against that. That is ultimately my job.
Mm-hmm.
We are allowed to express anger or displeasure or annoyance with each other, but we don't attack each other. We don't scapegoat anyone. There are some firm boundaries around the way we speak to each other. Now, despite the fact that I encourage them to talk about anything and be off the cuff, I'm going to catch it immediately if something is hurtful, offensive, something that's out of line, or like you said, sabotaging. I grab onto that right away and I start to I'm going to deal with that child. Now, when I say deal with them, there's no shaming, there's no punishing, there's questioning. So I start to explore it. What does this kid need that they're doing this? And typically it's connection, and it's more attention and connection. And that's what we're there for. So why are you sabotaging? What is it that you need right now? Let's get to the bottom of that so you don't have to hurt anyone else. Because if they're hurting someone else, it's because they are hurting themselves. So we get to the bottom of that.
Good point. And again, I don't think we can stress enough, right? I often use and say to parents, look, I hear you, I understand your concern, and I understand your worry, but reality is that's the world we live in, right? And
That's
we need
right.
to help your teen navigate, because there will be a bully in out in school and the real world as well. There is going to be
That's
somebody who's
right.
going to take advantage of other people's vulnerability and doesn't understand healthy boundaries and what have you. So we might as well work in it. Work on this in a little cosmic environment, as you say, where things are relatively controlled, right?
Right.
Um, and I mean, I know we have to go into a break in a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to say another thing, and that is, we've until now, Stephanie, you and I have focused a lot on sort of what does the teen get out of it. Um, and a thing we haven't touched so much on is the joy of giving back. So I feel in the
Yes.
beginning, the first, we'll talk more about how long this is going to go on for, but in the beginning of the process, typically it's a lot about getting something out of being in the group for the one that's there. But
Sure.
obviously, after time, after doing this for a while, the teens find an enormous amount of confidence and self-esteem build up and joy out of giving back to others, right? And being there
Mhm.
for others and having the empathy and the understanding of what new people are going through or what new kids are going
Mhm.
through in the group. So, sort of, I think it's important to tell parents and to make everybody aware that there is an enormous amount of confidence that we can build up in the teens by allowing for them to be there for others. Not to the point where they can't focus on themselves, because obviously that happens a lot, that teens are so focused on others and helping others out that they forget about
Correct.
themselves. But
Mhm.
to find that healthy balance where you can be there for others and give other good advice and show empathy and compassion for other people and love for other people. And that in itself creates self-esteem for you in the group, right? And that is enough for you to just show up and be there. You don't always have to have the whole group work on something that you are doing, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
I think that is important too. But Stephanie, unfortunately we have to go into our last little break here, and we'll be back in a few minutes and talk more. But you're listening to KHTS 98.1 FM, and this is the Insight Teen Hour. We're on every Monday between 2 and 3 p.m. here at KHTS. So tune in next Monday if you want to hear more. And we'll be back in a few minutes. Good afternoon, and welcome back to the Insight Teen Hour. I'm Frederik from Insight Treatment Programs here in Santa Clarita, a local IOP and PHP treatment program here for teenagers and their families. Today in the studio, I got Stefani Roscoe, LCSW in our community, who's doing a lot of great work with teens, and especially a lot of focus on teen groups. And we've been talking throughout the program, Stephanie, about all the work that you do and why teen groups are so important. Sort of what kids benefit from group and why that is. Um, Here we only have a few minutes left of the session today. But Stephanie, tell us a little bit about how does a typical process look like? If a parent calls you up, what are the typical situations that they're in? Um, how often do you run groups? Um, Tell us a little bit about the process. Oh, Stephanie, did we lose you? Let's see. It sounds as if we lost Stephanie here in the last few minutes of the program. While we'll try and get her back on the line. Uh, okay, but maybe I can answer a little bit. Let me see. I will give you. I might have her phone number right here. Sorry, everybody listening here. Mm, you could try this number. See if we can get her back on the line. But otherwise, I can say what I know because I know Stephanie, and her and I have been known each other for a long time. So Stephanie runs some groups. She runs groups in Sherman Oaks, and she runs groups down by LAX. She also runs some telehealth sessions. And so if you're interested, we'll make sure you get her phone number and her email address later on in the show before we end the show. But typically the way it works is you would call up Stephanie. She would sort of explain to you what the process is, meaning, should we start with an individual session with Stephanie and then go into the groups maybe later on after it has been assessed what's going on. And then you would participate in the groups with Stephanie a couple of times a week, sometimes once a week, depending on the need, of course. And what I know about Stephanie's group is some kids would be, have participated in the group for a long period of time. Um, oh, Stephanie, I hear you're back. Is that right?
Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden it was gone.
All good. Good you're back. I was explaining a
Great.
little bit about your program, but it's obviously better than you do it. But I was sort of telling the audience about your group, and in your group you sometimes, or you always have some kids who's been there for a longer period of time. But maybe you can
Yes.
take over there and sort of explain what is that? How long are you typically in your groups? What are the
Right.
age ranges?
Right. So typically the age range is, I'd like to keep it, a certain either older teams or younger teams. So I'm going to do like a 13 to 15 and like a 16 to 18. The group that I have right now has been together like since the beginning of the pandemic, and they have stayed together because they feel so connected that several of them have started college, and they still call in every Monday night
That's
and run the
great.
group together, and they really are dedicated to each other. So, I watched a kid who, 2 years ago was feeling like he wanted to end it all and had no reason to be here. And now he's in a 4-year university excelling. So it's
Ah,
really been incredible.
that's great. No, I think it is so important to have some teens there who's, some senior teens who's gone through,
Yes,
or young adults, right, who's gone through a lot and who can really support. I know in our program in the IOP, we use that a lot. It's so crucial to have some of the kids around who've gone through with a lot of things and knows the process, and also parents.
absolutely.
That parents sort of has a place to go and talk to other parents who've been going through some of the same things. So,
Yeah.
and Stephanie, what do you do? Payment wise, is it private pay? Are you doing insurance billing? How much is it? How do you
Great.
do that?
So it is all private pay. I do offer super bill, so people can submit to their insurance for their repayment. Right now, my groups are 75 for each group, each session that we meet. My associate runs a team group as well. Hers are $50.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, unfortunately, we're about to end now. So, Stephanie, how can people get hold of you? Could you tell us your phone number, website, email address, something like that before we
Sure.
end the show today?
Yes. So my website is Stefani Roscoe Therapy, and I spell it Stefani. Roscoe is Roscoe therapy.com. And you can you can email me there. You can call me from there. There's the phone numbers there, but that's the best place to go. That's the central hub.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time, Stephanie. I really appreciate your input. It's been great to having you on the
Thank you
show.
so much. It's been a great time. Thank you so much, Frederik.
You're welcome.